Our third panel discussion for today, align or get left behind. I guess for some time now, organisations have been under pressure to innovate using technology to drive change, to meet customer demand and stay ahead of the competition. And to achieve this change, it's vital that IT is well aligned with other divisions across the business. IT groups need to move from being reactive to being proactive providers of business solutions. So participants in our panel this afternoon will discuss how they've successfully aligned IT with other areas of their businesses and hopefully provide some advice on how you can do the same. So we've got three panellists up on stage. Closest to me is Basil Riley, who's the CEO of IT Solutions and Managed Service Provider, Logicalis Australia. In the middle, we've got Darren Warner, Regional Director, Infrastructure and Operations at commercial real estate firm CBRE Asia Pacific. And on the end, we have John Hagley, who's Executive Retail Innovation at women's fitness clothing retail group, Lorna Jane. All right, so I think Darren, first to cap off the rank, I'll throw to you first. I guess that you'd agree that IT departments are reactive in some ways, but in recent times you've created a much more scalable environment at your organisation that responds better to user needs, and virtualisation is a key part of that. Can you talk through what you've done on this front?
Yeah, right. So I think, as you say, reactive is something that's probably not going to change in our industry, but what we can do is take actions to stay in front of the game. So what we've had to do is change the way that we think to be able to scale up as we need to and able to respond to the business demands quite rapidly. So in that space, virtualization's played a key role, both on the server side and being able to spin up virtual servers and environments and applications when we need to, but just as importantly on the virtual desktop side, where we can make desktops rapidly available to large groups of users on the fly and really respond to demand. So that's been the key for us.
Okay, and you've also introduced new tools that let users essentially self-serve, so they can log tickets and access a knowledge base. And for the past 3 years, you've been making mobile applications available as well.
Yeah, so in the self-serve,
can you talk through those initiatives?
Yeah, so on the self-serve part, I think what we're seeing is a trend that users are becoming more and more willing to self-serve. They're quite used to that in terms of online tools that they use, online banking, and so we're seeing a willingness from a user perspective to self-serve. So we've made those tools available. They can log a ticket themselves, they can research our knowledge base themselves, they can reset their password themselves, and hopefully what that does is reduce the strain on our service desk and provides a better all-round experience for the user.
And have you been able to, how has that changed the way the business views the IT group? Have you been able to measure that?
Yeah, it's difficult to measure because you're typically tracking the tickets. And if a user's researching their own answer and finding their own, serving that themselves, you don't typically see a ticket. But what we are seeing is that it's leading to better response times for when the ticket is opened, because we're not dealing with that type of ticket in the future.
Okay. And John, you're in the middle of, a full renovation of the IT architecture there at Lorna Jane, new WAN, ERP, moving data to the cloud. I mean, you've been there for 6 months now, and there's a drive to know your customers more intimately and closing the gap between online and offline. Can you describe how these initiatives will allow your IT group to align more closely with the rest of the organisation?
I think it's a bigger challenge at Lorna Jane because they are really a pure retailer. They are very good at doing that. They've been going for 25 years. And they have grown steadily through that 25 years. So retail is something they do really well, bringing IT along kind of for the ride up until this point. So what we're trying to do now is really kind of do the housekeeping stuff. We really need to get stable systems in play. We need to get mobility as part of the suite that we offer. We need to get e-commerce and all of those channels together, really working seamlessly in order to support that retail activity. Because they like to go out quickly, they like to try something, they like to fail, and then they like to change it and restart again. So the challenge for the IT is to be available at all times and to be where they need you to be. And that's really, I know that sounds like a very sort of high-level statement, but giving them access to things like Office 365, offline access to files, online access to files, those types of things have really allowed our staff to work away from the office and to be where they need to be, which is out on the retail storefront.
And how's that going so far? Have you measured, how are they responding to those changes?
It's actually really difficult to measure it at Lorna Jane because the culture there is so strong. We have a really positive culture, and one of the things that, coming away from my last role in government, one of the things that is very hard to measure at Lorna Jane is satisfaction, because everyone and I know this sounds kind of corny, but everyone's really happy to be there. They're really quite keen on what they do. They're very passionate about it. They love the brand, and they're very good at doing stuff. You know, they're very good at making things happen. So when we go out there and we say, can we, you know, please have this store cabled up, or can you please give me some, you know, statistics or some data on this? It literally, yep, no problem, bang, and it's on your desk within 10 minutes, you know. And it's that has meant that anything that is seen as, you know, not meeting the mark, they just find a way to get around it. And that is both a good thing and a bad thing.
Mm. Okay, so there's a bit of shadow IT as well, is quite prevalent
Absolutely,
in your organisation. Yeah. I mean, what do you think that says about the way users feel about whether or not IT group can provide them with the services that they need? I mean, how will you go about changing that?
Well, what we're doing is we're making the tools more available. So we're making them, like I said, being able to work offline. You know, we have, 30 to 40 state and area managers that get around both here and in the US, and they need access to email, they need access to files, they need access to all of the information that head office can pass down to them. You know, they need that all the time. And whether or not they have access to the service. So things like RDP, where we've been in the past, is not really suitable because they've had to kind of wing it in the gaps where they don't have access to that. So by giving them a tool that they can use, we found that we just don't hear back from them again. So they'll come back to us using the ticketing system that we've just recently stood up. We don't see repeats. And we go out and ring them up and say, hey, is everything okay? You know, have we upset you? And they're like, no problems. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll take that. Thanks very much.
Absolutely. And the best IT is IT that's silent. If it's working and no one's complaining, then that's the best situation to be in.
One of my very early mentors said we're anonymous in our presence and conspicuous in our absence.
Absolutely. So, question for you, Basil. I mean, from the customers that you talk to in your role, I mean, how are they communicating their value to the business? And do you think organisations are doing a good job of it? IT organisations.
I think if you look at most IT org charts, it hasn't changed since the 80s. So I think what a lot of people that we're working with are trying to do is restructure IT and come up with a new structure that's going to work. So you see a lot of people are putting in business partners. So these are people who go out in the business and manage the IT workload and really understand what the business wants. So they're getting rid of some headcount and putting in new headcount to do new roles. So a lot of people really are trying to look at how do we structure IT so it is possible for it to engage better with the business. So we've been doing some work around the IT organisation in the future and helping people first of all look at a sourcing strategy to say, well, what do you want to do yourself? What does the business actually care that you do? Because there's a whole lot of stuff that the business really doesn't care about. So we help them develop a sourcing strategy and they say, right, so these are the skills we want in-house. So based on that, you then say, right, what type of org structure is going to work for you to engage better with the business if this is what you want to provide? And then everything else they're going to partner or outsource to do. So we see a lot of people trying to restructure IT to get roles in that are proactive roles that have time to understand the business and engage better with the business.
Okay. And this is probably a question for everyone, but Darren, I'll start with you. I mean, how do staff rate the effectiveness of your group and its ability to align with the business? What measurements are used? Do we talk about return on investment? Do we talk about the pace at which IT responds to various issues? Are there other factors? I mean, how do they provide that
Look,
feedback?
I think it's a combination of all three. At its very simplest level, we send a survey back at the end of 1 in 10 tickets that we close and say, how did you rate our performance? But on a wider scale, yes, we're looking at return on investment. We're looking on speed of delivery, and those things are being measured. So, it's a combination of factors.
But it's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it? Because when things go wrong, you all of a sudden, people get really upset and they rate you badly and they don't. You don't really sort of. I guess it takes a lot to get that trust back, doesn't it?
It does. You're right. I think you probably get one positive piece of feedback for every 100 things that you do if you're lucky. But people are always quick to tell you when you're wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So, and Lorna Jane, how do you rate? How do staff rate the effectiveness?
Well, we've set up a service management portal just recently. So we bought into a very simple web-based service management portal, and it's discipline that Lorna Jane hasn't really had in the past. So we're starting to log tickets properly now and assign them to the right people properly. And so what we're doing is sending those tickets out, and of course at the end of those tickets, when you resolve, there's a little survey. But we put in a 10-point survey, like a little bit of a net promoter thing. it didn't really get a huge uptake because people sort of looked at that and went, nah, too complicated, too difficult, I don't want to worry about it. But then what we did is we put in a happy face, a mediocre face, and a smiley face, and it was much better. So what we did is a little smiley face or a little unhappy face. And as soon as we get one, because we're basically a very closely linked company, we just pick up the phone and we walk around and we go and say, well, what's the problem, what's the issue? And that's worked very well for us. And we get a lot of feedback on those types of things. And people, funnily enough, that's actually driven adoption of the portal as well. So people have been talking about it, and then it's kind of driven that social adoption of the portal in the service management context.
And Basil, I believe you've been a CEO in a past life, have you?
Yeah, I did
So
15.
You did a reorg yourself?
Yeah, I did 15 years as a CIO in Europe and the US before I moved to the dark side. I got sick of writing the strategy for the business and thought I may as well just go run a business myself. Because that's what you end up doing in IT. You say to the business, well, before I can come up with my IT strategy and align it to your business, I need your business strategy. And it's like, where is it? And you end up trying to write it for them. And so I spent a lot of time doing that, and I'll just go run a business. I think in terms of measurements and people knowing how effective they are in being aligned to the business, I think the big thing is if you're in IT, the odds are you're not going to be that good at sales and marketing. You're pretty much left brain. So the thought of hiring a marketing consultant, everybody's happy to hire a consultant to write their IT strategy. But you then say, right, you now need to go hire a marketing consultant to communicate and market that to the business. And they go, oh, we can't have marketing people in IT. I've never met a CIO that got fired because of technology. They always got fired because of politics, stakeholder management, and communication. Like talking to John earlier, yeah, he's surveying customers, he's following up, are customers happy? But the thing that's going to secure his future the most is the fact that he plays tennis with the CEO. You know, so
Is
when
that
he,
true?
so
Yeah,
when
it's
he,
true, yes, yeah.
so when he when he screws up, and he will, because he's in IT and that's what we do. That's our job, right?
Quite on that?
Yeah, you know, it's like we're the problem department, right? When he screws up, what will keep him in his job? Well, the fact that he has that relationship, and the guy's going to go, you know, John, explain to me what's gone wrong here, and they'll have a discussion human to human rather than going, that dickhead doesn't know what he's doing. And that's what we're missing in IT is those skills of stakeholder management, communication and marketing. We really don't do enough of that. We're too busy worrying about at 2 a.m. in the morning, is the ERP system still up? And so that's why the business partner role is starting to look at some of that, and a number of organizations are doing that to start managing the politics, managing the stakeholders, knowing who likes you, who doesn't, and who you have to work on.
Absolutely. So, John, apart from playing tennis with the CEO, which is a great strategy, might I add, is there anything else that you do to sort of, I guess, help you control the conversation and have more sort of, I guess, clout with other C-level executives inside the organisation?
Lorna Jane by itself is a very culturally driven company. So a lot of the stuff we do is informal. We're not big around formalised meetings. We're not big around any of that sort of formality you'd find in a bigger organisation. In fact, coming down here, I actually went and bought myself a jacket on Sunday because I haven't owned one for quite a while. And what it means for me is really building those relationships. I spend a lot of time with my peers, my peer executives, with the CEO, with the CFO, with Lorna as well, actually talking about where we're headed and what we're doing. And a lot of those things, there's no set agenda, there's no any of that. It's really just getting in front of them and building that rapport and building that trust. And really, from a CIO's perspective, I've always seen it as our responsibility to understand the business and not for them to understand us in effect. And really drive that relationship building and really use that to, you've got to immerse yourself in the business. When I move from business to business, a lot of my friends accuse me of drinking the Kool-Aid wherever I go. But I feel that you really need to understand it, otherwise you can't make reasonable decisions. And I've come from a technical background, but my strategy moving forward is I've got to understand the people better, otherwise it's never going to work.
And will that involve sort of doing workshops with them and that sort of thing, or
yeah, when you come down to
in terms of what technology can do for them, and
yeah, so when you come down to sort of formalising requirements, then absolutely you go through a workshop process and you do those types of things. But realistically, a lot of the conversations that we have are really around what their problems are, how they're dealing with them, what the things are that we could potentially do for them. I spend a lot of time canvassing vendors and doing a lot of reading and making sure that I can come up with solutions that might fit what I call the digital playbook. So we need to present these hardcore retailers with a list of arrows in a quiver, which we can then present to them to use in a coordinated fashion. And that's really, particularly in retail, it needs to be dynamic. It needs to be, built with components, not a silver bullet approach, because it doesn't work like that.
And Darren, what role is organisational culture playing across your business, and what, how do you make sure that you're close to other C-level executives and you're aligned with what their business strategy is?
Sure. So just going back to what Basil was saying before, we've introduced IT staff within the business lines. That's enabled us to be closer to the ground. I think one of the things about our organisation is that there's so many facets of real estate, and they're quite different. If you're valuing a property, it's quite different to managing a property or selling a property or leasing a property. So what we've done is we've put people into each of these business lines and really let them be the ears and eyes for us in IT, and then we've taken that feedback back. And so there's always going to be things that we want to centrally deliver, but those are not really the things that make that competitive advantage for that business line. I mean, anyone can give you email, anyone can give you a telephone, but it's an application within a business line that really helps them drive their business.
Yeah, okay. Just a question on, there's obviously a lot of, people want applications, they want services quickly. There's been a big rise in Agile Development methodologies. Do you guys use those types of methodologies in your business, and have they helped you develop applications and services more quickly than you have been in the past? And does that actually have a positive impact on the way that people view their IT department?
Yeah, so I'll give you one big example where we use a mobile application. We look after about 60% of the residential valuations in Australia. So when you buy a house on the weekend and the bank comes out to value it, 60% of the time that's us. We do that 100% on mobile devices. Our valuer goes out there with a checklist, tick, tick, tick on a tablet. Report goes back to the bank as soon as he gets to the car. So what we're seeing is that's really driving productivity, because no longer is that valuer going back to the office with their paperwork, sitting down, re-entering that data, trying to remember what he saw at the property, trying to remember out which photo belonged to which property. It's live, it's always on. So instead of being able to get to 6 valuations a day, you might be able to get to 10. So that's more money in the valuer's back pocket. It's more money in the company.
Now, John, do you use those sorts of methodologies to develop tools inside your business?
Yeah, I think, again, I come back to this sort of retail model. It's just really fast and really dynamic, and, really requires your attention at all times. For us to do long-term type things, generally they don't follow any kind of framework or methodology. But when you actually look at how Lorna Jane operates in that retail environment, it's almost like an agile approach. It's almost like they've defined their own framework. And it's from us, even delivering changes to the current ERP, or even us delivering new functionality to the POS or things like that, it's always born out of a necessity come from the business. And that's been because they want to try something new, or they want to include a functionality, or they want to train the staff better, or those types of things. And we work very hard on deadlines to deliver specific functionality out there. And so my business analysts spend a lot of time trimming down that functionality to make sure, in true agile methodology, we deliver what we say we're going to deliver in that sprint or in that piece of work. And so that's really about hitting that deadline, but setting the expectation up front that this is what you're actually going to deliver, and making hard business decisions. And they're very good at doing that.
And Baz, do you have any additional comments in relation to that? from what you're seeing with your customers?
No, I used to do software development for a living as a CIO, but really today, most people are just looking to do the most of it off the shelf, so have someone else do the development for you. The issue comes down to then is data integration, where you say, can I have a single view of the customer? And it's like, well, we've got 5 cloud solutions, so how you do that's becoming a different challenge. Or even if you want a single view of the employee and you've got 5 HR systems as a service, how do you get all of these things to integrate? But I'm sure people like Accenture, etc., are out solving that problem for people to say, okay, you've bought all of this off the shelf stuff, now we'll help you bring it all together and integrate some of the data, the data warehouse, etc. But I think people are avoiding really long-term, when I started my job as a CIO, I took over a project that had been going for 11 years, right? And that wasn't unusual. right? And the system we were working on was 45 years old, right? It was like COBOL Basic. That wasn't unusual either. Nobody wants to come to work and do that today, right? If you can buy a package that does it, then that's the way to go.
So I guess a lot of CIOs have come from technical backgrounds, obviously, and there's a need for them to have more focus on the business, as what we've just been discussing here. But what advice would, I guess, the three of you have for CIOs that do come from quite technical backgrounds and really need to have more business nows? Do they need to go out and get an MBA? What do they need to do? What are the things they need to do to get closer to the business?
I think from my perspective, I've been to university, I've done the whole bit and piece, but the thing that I found most valuable is just talking to people and trying to understand and listening. Using the rule of three, all this really basic stuff that they teach you is really useful, and listening to what their pain points are and understanding those things. And you really have to take that in context of what the technology can do and really learn hard about the business. And what you will do as you go through, different industries and different situations is you'll pick up the core issues that afflict every single business out there. And that's where you often start your journey in a new organisation or in a new project is with those core issues. And I think that's learning how to identify those and how to relate that to the technology and how to layer in technology to fix those issues, I think is the real skill. And unfortunately, they don't really teach that anywhere.
No, absolutely not. Darren, you got some thoughts on that?
Yes, I'd echo that. I mean, I'd strongly echo that. And what I'd add is it's really important to speak in a language that, that business executive is going to understand. People that come from a technical background quite often want to speak in a technical language, but that's not typically something that's well understood by the business. So you need to find a way to bring that back. I always talk about bandwidth as lanes on a road, for example. We can add more bandwidth, we add more lanes, that's fine, but that doesn't improve the latency. So that type of scenario where you bring it back to something that they can understand within the business, that tends to help, in addition to what John said.
Okay.
I think probably the best thing you can do is work in the business. So go out if you're the CIO of Coles, work on a checkout for a week, work in the warehouse driving a forklift truck. If you're providing a sales force with sales systems, try and enter your forecast in your shitty CRM system. So try and go out and do the job of as many people. Go to the finance department on month-end close and try and do month-end close on the system you provided to them. And suddenly your world changes. Because I did this and it was like, oh my God.
This is really out the cold face.
Yeah, it was just terrible. It was just changed everything completely, my view of doing the job. I suddenly realised why the CFO rang me once a month and tore me a new asshole, right? Because when I actually tried to enter data into our systems, I was like, really, you have to go through this screen 5 times? Why couldn't it just be on one screen? And I was like, well, you designed it, right? So that's a really great grounding for us all, whether we're business people or IT. Go and work in the business for a few weeks in every different job that's using your systems, and you'll see the world completely differently.
Yeah, good advice.
Yeah.
Good advice.
And push your staff to do it too. That's probably for me is, everybody who joins Lorna Jane goes to retail training, goes through how to use the POS, how to hang the clothes, how to sell them, how to layer them. I know things about women's fashion that I really shouldn't know, But the thing is that gives you, from day one, gives you an understanding of the business and how it works. And pushing your staff to do the same thing. Like, they all do it, but we go back out into the field and we do it regularly. We do it about once every 6 months. We send someone out to a store based on some feedback. And they'll work there for maybe half a day, and that's enough for them to see, right, because it's high repeat, so it's doing the same thing over and over again. So it doesn't take long, but it's very valuable.
Okay. So we got time for questions. Has anyone got any questions they'd like to ask our panel? Come on, somebody must have one. There's one over there. There's a microphone coming over, mate.
Thank you. So we talked a little bit about service metrics earlier on. Do you guys have any advice for us around how do you get metrics that align to that functional area of a business? So like leads for a marketing organisation, conversion for your sales organisation, contact rates for your support organisation. Do you have any experience aligning the long-term success of your IT teams to the outcomes that those stakeholders are looking for?
Good question. Who'd like to go first, John?
Yeah, in one of my previous lives, I worked on a project where we actually came up with what we called, it was a very hard thing to say, but it was business-centric metrics. And you can't say that 3 times really quickly. But what they were was metrics along the lines of, we need to print a certain number of statements, or we need to print a certain number of reports out, and that is directly tied to business productivity. So that metric is their metric. So supporting with printing systems and with ERP systems and availability, those metrics all fed in to meet that one. And if they failed theirs because of an issue from one of the supporting metrics, then we failed ours. So you can do that. Like, to be honest, the business doesn't really care about availability or uptime or latency. They don't really care about any of that. What they care about is they can get their job done. And to come up with metrics like that, there's a really great book called How to Measure Anything. And it's Douglas, you've probably heard of it before, I can't think of the guy's surname now. But that book is amazing at teaching you how to measure, putting tangible measurements against intangible things.
That's a similar story at CBRE. I don't have such a convoluted name for it, but yeah, similar process that we have in terms of measuring, outputs of a business and measuring that along the chain.
I'll give you a different answer from a business perspective. They don't give a shit. They really don't. So, you can spend all your time trying to come up with metrics that make sense to you as an IT person, but really, if you're thinking at that level, they don't care. Your CEO cares, first of all, about his personal productivity. So is his iPad working? Is his phone working? Does his PC at home working? Can he make calls in the car? The second thing he cares about is you not making him look stupid in front of his boss. So does he know who to call at 4 a.m. when he's doing the presentation for the board? Other than that, he really doesn't give a hoot about IT at all, right? So this is the problem we're looking at. When I ask CIOs what's the top 3 priorities of the business, they might say ERP, CRM, etc. And it's like, well, your CEO really doesn't care about any of that, right? They really don't. You've really got to get inside their head as to what it is that's important to them. And when I ask most CIOs, when you're going to get fired, who are the 3 people going to be involved in that conversation? They go, well, this guy. And I go, yeah, he's your boss. Who else? Not sure. Well, go find out, and then go find out what they think of you. Because it doesn't matter all the metrics in the world, what's going to get you hard and fired, there'll be 3 people have a conversation in a room about you, and do you know what they're going to say? Right? Do you have a relationship with them, and do you know what they think about you? One of the best things you can do as a CIO is go out and get someone in HR or a consultant to do a 360 for you. 360 will be confidential. It'll be the first time in your career you really know what the business thinks about you, and you can work on that. Your boss is never going to tell you what he thinks because he has to work with you every day. But go out and get a confidential 360, and you'll find out half of it will be okay. The other half you go, right, I've got work to do. But you really need to know the human side of what business people think of IT people. It's not about metrics, it's not about ServiceNow, it's not about ERP, it's not about reports. It's about human interaction that people like ourselves in IT aren't that great at. It's trying to understand some of that stuff. So there's a different view for you.
Try not to do it straight after a security breach or network's down or something like that. That wouldn't be a good time. Any other questions? We've still got a bit of time. Anybody? Come on, there must be one more question in the room. No? All right, well, we could probably wrap it up there. Thanks, gentlemen. That was really informative. Join me in thanking our panellists.
No worries. Thank you.